All right, today we're going to talk about something wild, how you can build a massive fortune on, well, seemingly nothing. It's a story that connects flowers from the 1600s to a video game store in our own time, and it tells us something really fundamental about money and, how people think.
Okay, let's just dive right in with the mystery that had everybody talking. GameStop. Yeah, that place in the mall you probably haven't been to in years. A company selling physical game discs when everything's going digital. Their business was, let's be honest, sinking. And yet, for one crazy moment, its stock went straight to the moon. So how on earth did that happen?
And this chart just says it all. I mean, the gap is unbelievable. On one side, you have what GameStop was actually worth in the real world. Its sales, its stores, its not-so-great future. And on the other, you have a stock price that just shot into the stratosphere. That giant, massive gap between reality and hype, that, my friends, is an economic bubble. To really get what happened with GameStop, we have to jump in a time machine, and I mean way, way back, to the 1600s in Holland. This was the Dutch Golden Age, and it was the scene of the first and maybe the most famous economic bubble of all time. It just sounds insane, right? People were trading their homes for a flower. But you have to understand, people were getting swept up in a total frenzy. They saw their neighbors getting rich overnight, buying and selling these brand new exotic flowers. And that belief that they could get rich quick too, it led them to make these unbelievable bets, selling everything they owned for a little bulb that wasn't even in the ground yet. And this is where it just gets nuts. To buy one of these rare tulip bulbs, you'd have to trade a whole farm's worth of actual stuff. Oxen, pigs, literally tons of butter and cheese. The value had nothing to do with the flower anymore. It was all about the belief that you could always find someone else, some other sucker, to buy it from you for even more. And listen, if you think this was just a case of people being naive back in the day, think again. Even Sir Isaac Newton, literally one of the smartest people who ever lived, got caught up in a bubble and lost an absolute fortune. He famously said, "I can calculate the motion of heavenly bodies, but not the madness of people." That pretty much sums it up. So here's the really important part. These events, they aren't just random flashes of craziness. They actually follow a script. For centuries, economists have been studying this stuff, and they figured out there's a surprisingly predictable pattern, almost a recipe for how financial madness unfolds. In the simplest terms, a bubble is just when people buy something. It doesn't matter if it's a tulip, a stock, or a house, not because of what it's actually worth, but because they think they can flip it to someone else for a higher price later. It basically becomes a high-stakes game of hot potato, with billions of dollars flying around. So the economist Charles Kindleberger, he mapped out the whole journey. It always kicks off with what he called displacement. Some new, exciting thing comes along, like tulips or the internet, and gets people buzzing. That buzz builds into a boom as more and more people jump on the bandwagon. Then you hit euphoria, where prices just go vertical, totally bonkers. And then, well, then comes the panic, when the whole thing comes crashing down. Now that euphoria stage, that's where our own brains kind of turn against us. We're just wired for this stuff. You've got FOMO, right? The fear of missing out. You see everyone else getting rich and you think, I've got to get in on this. Then there's the greater fool theory, the belief that no matter what crazy price you pay, there's always a greater fool out there willing to pay even more. And all the while, confirmation bias is kicking in, making us only listen to the good news and ignore all the blaring red flags. Okay, so now that we have this playbook, the stages, the psychology, let's take it and go right back to GameStop. Because in early 2021, this classic story played out again, but with a totally modern digital twist. The battle lines were drawn.
At the very heart of this whole saga is a pretty complicated financial move called short selling. All you really need to know is this. Big Wall Street hedge funds looked at GameStop's struggling business and made a massive, multi-billion-dollar bet that its stock was going to crash and burn.
Here's an easy way to think about it. Imagine you borrow your friend's new iPhone, and you promise to give it back to them in a year. You immediately go and sell it for $1,000. A year goes by, the new model is out, and now that old phone is only worth $600. So you buy it back for $600, give it back to your friend like you promised, and you just made $400 on something you never even owned. You literally profited from its price going down. That's short selling. But, and this is a huge but, there is an absolutely massive risk. See, when you buy a stock normally, the most you can lose is whatever you paid for it. If it goes to zero, you lose all your money and that's it. But when you short a stock, there is no ceiling on how high the price can go. And if you bet against it, that means there is literally no limit to how much money you can lose. It's infinite. So this set up the perfect David versus Goliath showdown. In one corner, you have the Wall Street Titans, these giant hedge funds with billions of dollars, all betting on GameStop to fail. And in the other corner, you have this decentralized army of regular people, small-time investors, all gathering on a Reddit forum called Wall Street Bets, who decided they were going to fight back. And things just exploded. This was not a slow burn. It was a wildfire. In just a few weeks, in January 2021, a few key things happened that threw gasoline on the fire. A new investor joined the board. People found out that the hedge funds had shorted over 100% of all the company's stock, which shouldn't even be possible. And then Elon Musk sent out a one-word tweet that just sent the whole thing into absolute overdrive. And the result of all this? It was just astonishing. A single share of GameStop, a stock that was worth less than $3 a few months earlier, hit a peak of nearly $500 a share. The company was the same, but its value on paper was astronomical. But right at the peak, just as these small investors on Reddit were celebrating what felt like a truly historic win against Wall Street, the game suddenly changed, and it made everyone, from the pros to people just watching on the news, ask a really uncomfortable question. In a move that absolutely nobody saw coming, the app Robinhood, the very platform that had made this whole revolution possible for small investors, just pulled the plug. Out of the blue, they banned users from buying any more GameStop stock. You could sell, but you couldn't buy. They slammed the on-ramp shut, but left the off-ramp wide open. This, as you can imagine, created a massive firestorm. So you've got two completely different stories. Robinhood's official claim was that it was a plumbing issue, that the market was so crazy their financial partners demanded billions of dollars in cash that they just didn't have. But the accusation from all the users was a lot simpler and a lot darker, that they rigged the game to bail out the powerful hedge funds that were losing their shirts. When you really step back and look at it, the whole GameStop saga is a perfect modern example of this idea some economists call fictitious capital. It's basically the idea that billions or even trillions of dollars in value can be created and then wiped out on paper, all through speculation, without the actual real-world company doing a single thing differently. And all of this leaves us with one last really big question to chew on. Are these wild, chaotic events like Tulip Mania and GameStop just rare glitches in the system, a bug? Or do they actually reveal something fundamental about how our modern financial world is designed to work? Are they a feature? It's a question that makes you wonder what value even really means.